in 1985. If you walked through the employee parking lot outside a modest headquarters in Bentonville, Arkansas, you would have seen a dusty red pickup truck, dented door, dog cage bolted into the bed. Nothing about it said money. That truck belonged to the richest man in America. His name was Sam Walton. He founded Walmart, and by the time Forbes crowned him the wealthiest person in the country, he was still driving that same beat-up 1979 Ford F-150 to work. Every single day, parked among the trucks of his own store managers. You'd expect the richest man alive to drive something that screamed it. Instead, he drove something that hid it completely. And 200 years earlier, on another continent, a brilliant French philosopher learned exactly why that decision matters. The hard way, over nothing more than a bathrobe. By the end of this video, you'll understand why one of these men quietly built one of the largest fortunes in history, and why the other nearly went bankrupt trying to look like he already had one. And you'll understand why the same trap is still open, right now, waiting for you, disguised as a car payment or a new phone. To understand why that truck was such a strange sight, you have to remember the era it was sitting in. The 1980s were the decade that turned looking rich into a full-blown culture. Wall Street was booming. Credit cards were multiplying, and for the first time, ordinary people could finance a lifestyle they hadn't actually earned yet. Success stopped being something you quietly built and became something you were expected to broadcast through the car in the driveway, the suit on your back, the brand on your wrist. Everyone around Sam Walton was playing that game. He simply refused to. Let's start with the truck. Sam Walton grew up during the Great Depression in a part of the country where nobody had much of anything. That kind of childhood leaves a mark. Some people who grow up with nothing spend the rest of their lives trying to prove they're not poor anymore. Walton went the opposite direction. He built an entire company around the idea that spending less than you have to is not a limitation. It's a weapon. In 1962, he opened his first Walmart store. Over the following decades, he turned it into the largest retailer on the planet. And the whole time, he ran the company the same way he ran his own life. Store buyers were told to share hotel rooms on business trips. Executives worked out of offices that looked more like a warehouse break room than a corporate suite. Walton himself flew coach on commercial flights for almost his entire life, and by most accounts, sat in first class exactly once. When people asked him why the richest man in the country was still driving an old pickup, instead of something that matched his bank account, he gave an answer that became one of his most repeated lines. He said he didn't believe in a big, showy lifestyle, and asked what he was supposed to haul his dogs around in. A Rolls Royce. That single sentence is the whole video, if you think about it long enough. Here's what's easy to miss. Walton's frugality wasn't just a personality quirk. It became Walmart's entire competitive advantage. Every dollar the company didn't spend on appearances, it could instead spend on lower prices for customers, or reinvest into growth. The company's own executives later said this obsession with cutting costs at the top was the reason Walmart could keep undercutting every competitor for 30 straight years. Looking poor wasn't just Walton's personal habit. It was baked into the business model. That made him one of the richest men who ever lived. Now, rewind 2 centuries, because someone else discovered what happens when you go the other way. In 1769, a French philosopher named Denis Diderot wrote a short, strange essay about a gift he received, a beautiful new scarlet dressing gown. He loved it. He was proud of it. And it ruined him. The problem wasn't the gown itself. It was everything sitting next to it. Diderot's old study was full of worn, mismatched, comfortable things. A straw chair, a plain wooden desk, a faded rug, some cheap prints on the wall. None of it had ever bothered him before. But next to his elegant new robe, all of it suddenly looked shabby. So he replaced the chair. Then the desk didn't match the chair, so he replaced that too. Then the old rug looked wrong next to the new furniture, so that went as well. One purchase justified the next, and the next, until Diderot had rebuilt an entire room around a single robe, and spent money he didn't have doing it. He later reflected that he had been the complete master of his old, worn-out robe. His new one had quietly turned him into its servant instead. Researchers eventually gave this pattern a name, the Diderot Effect. One upgrade creates the appearance of needing another. A new car makes the driveway look wrong. A nicer driveway makes the front door look outdated. It's not that any single purchase is irrational. It's that each one quietly recruits the next one, and the spiral doesn't announce itself until you're already standing in it. Two men, 2 centuries apart. One drove a broken-down truck and built one of history's great fortunes. The other accepted a single free gift and wrote his own case study in going broke. The difference wasn't luck, and it wasn't income. It was which side of that spiral they chose to stand on. This is where the math gets uncomfortable, because it isn't just a story. It's a pattern researchers have measured directly. The Millionaire Next Door, a landmark study of American millionaires, found that the typical millionaire's most recent car purchase cost a little over $30,000. Not $100,000, $30,000. The average car buyer in America spends around 30% of their net worth on a vehicle. The average millionaire spends closer to 1%. The people with the least to prove are consistently the ones spending the least to prove it. Warren Buffett is the most famous living example. Decades into being one of the richest people on the planet, he still lives in the same modest house in Omaha that he bought long before anyone knew his name. Not because he can't afford something bigger, because the house was never the point. And this isn't just a story about billionaires and millionaires. It plays out at every income level, just with smaller numbers attached. The moment your monthly expenses climb to match your paycheck, you've quietly handed away your own leverage. You can't push back on a bad manager. You can't take a lower-paying job you'd actually enjoy. You can't walk away from a role that's burning you out, because the lease, the mortgage, and the subscriptions are all due on the 1st, regardless of how you feel about your job that month. The car that was supposed to represent freedom ends up being the exact thing chaining you to a desk. This is the part that should genuinely bother you, if you're honest about it. Looking rich and being rich pull money in opposite directions. Every dollar spent signaling wealth is a dollar that can't compound into actual wealth. The BMW payment, the newest phone every year, the vacation you post, but can't really afford. All of it is money leaving the system before it ever gets the chance to grow. And here's the twist that makes this whole thing sting a little more. Sam Walton hid his wealth so well that even the people closest to him misjudged it. David Glass, who ran Walmart as CEO for over a decade, once said that if he hadn't personally seen the company's financial filings, he would have sworn Sam Walton was broke. Not struggling, broke. That's how convincingly a decades-long habit of looking poor can disguise a multi-billion-dollar fortune, even from the man running the company alongside him. But there's a second twist, and it's the one that should really change how you think about all of this. Even if you do get the flashy version of success, the payoff you're expecting might not actually arrive. In 1978, a group of psychologists ran a now-famous study comparing major lottery winners to a group of ordinary people, and separately, to people who had survived serious accidents. Common sense says lottery winners should be dramatically happier than everyone else. They weren't. On a simple happiness scale, the winners scored only marginally higher than ordinary people, a difference so small it wasn't considered statistically meaningful. Winning a fortune didn't buy lasting happiness. It bought a temporary spike. That faded back to whatever baseline the person started with. That's the quiet, brutal joke. Sitting underneath all of this, you spend the money to look successful, hoping it will make you feel successful. And the research suggests that feeling doesn't last long enough to justify what it costs. You're not just paying for the car, or the watch, or the vacation. You're paying to rent an emotion that evaporates in a matter of weeks. So picture that parking lot in Bentonville one more time. A dented truck, parked among 100 others exactly like it, belonging to a man who could have bought the entire dealership without checking his balance first. Nobody looking at that truck would have guessed what was actually sitting behind the wheel. That was never an accident. That was the whole strategy. The uncomfortable question this leaves you with is simple. How much of what you spend every month exists purely so other people draw the right conclusion about you? Not the version they'd conclude from your bank statement. The version they'd conclude from your driveway, your closet, your last vacation post. Nobody is asking you to drive a broken truck or wear the same shirt for a decade. That's not the lesson. The lesson is that the version of you that looks the most successful and the version of you that actually is the most successful are very often standing on opposite sides of the same spending decision. Sam Walton picked one side for 40 years, and it built an empire. Dennis Diderot picked the other over a single robe, and it nearly buried him. The truck is still sitting in a museum in Arkansas today, dented door and all. People line up to see it because it's become a kind of monument, not to poverty, to the idea that the most powerful financial decision you can make is the one nobody else ever notices you making.